Do you ever yearn for the charm and simplicity of past times? Well, today we'll step back in time and explore one of the most historic towns in the Midwest on a hunt for unique antiques. Then we'll return home and I'll show you how I style all my vintage finds in my decidedly more modern house. So, if you're ready for some antique shopping and decorating inspiration, let's get started. We recently visited Galena, a small town in northwestern Illinois. It's often considered to be one of the most beautiful small towns in America. It's full of lovely Victorian homes, including the home of Ulysses S. Grant, who lived in Galena prior to being elected President of the United States. If you're interested, I'll share some more photos from Grant's home at the end of today's video. We stayed at the Old City Jail that has been converted into a beautiful bed and breakfast. If you could remove all of the cars, you would think that you had stepped back in time as you walk down a main street that looks like something straight out of the 1800s. Not surprisingly, my favorite store was called A Piece of the Past, an antique store with hundreds of great old books and many interesting antiques. I did think their prices were a little high, but I still brought home a few things, which I'll show you later in the video. The next day, we traveled 15 minutes outside Galena to the small town of Elizabeth, where they've converted an old schoolhouse into a huge antique mall. They've created a beautiful outdoor courtyard where bored spouses and family members can spend the day. You know this is going to be a good antique mall when you walk in and see barnwood. It's overpriced in my opinion, but I haven't bought barnwood in a really long time, so I guess the price has skyrocketed like everything else. These old bricks sure were pretty. I had no idea what their original purpose was. I was guessing that I must be standing in the school's old boiler room. I wasn't surprised to see a lot of Victorian furniture in this antique mall because many people in this area like to furnish their homes with authentic antiques. They were asking $60 for this green velvet chair, and now I am really regretting that I did not bring it home with me. And they were asking $65 for this lovely needlepoint chair. Of course, this blue and white tin caught my eye, and for a minute I thought about passing on it because I already have so much blue and white decor. But can you ever really have too much blue and white? I'm always on the lookout for interesting lamps, and I saw this piece from an old hurricane lamp. I intended to buy it and use it for a vase, but somehow I came home without it. I'm also always on the lookout for vintage wall art, so of course these Civil War fashion prints really got my attention. I also thought this dandelion crewel piece was so pretty and only $30. I have a few of these Durkee's vintage spice tins, and I think I'm going to do something with them for Christmas because I love the red and green colors. I just saw so many lovely things. And for the most part, I felt that the prices were really quite fair. The Victorians just loved their taxidermy, and I do love the butterflies, but do you see that bat? Yeah, that's a big no thank you for me. Okay, this is really going to date me, but I had a beaded purse like this when I was in grade school, and this one is in great condition. I don't know if any of you remember this, but I tried to dry out gourds last year, but they ended up rotting. There is definitely an art to it. This looks like somebody made a giant spider out of a metal bowl and some rebar. And although I think that is super creative, I have absolutely zero desire to purchase this. It was at this point that I realized I was walking on the old gymnasium floor. I immediately fell in love with these bookends, and I was actually able to negotiate a better price with the vendor. But when I got home, I didn't have them. And as it turns out, the cashier forgot to ring them up and add them to my order. I can't tell you how disappointed I was to know that I had left them behind. This miniature phonograph was only $1, so you know I grabbed it up because it will look so cute in my little book nook. I thought this was such a unique spice rack and would look adorable in a red kitchen. I loved this mustard-colored trunk. How perfect is this for fall? When this metal container first caught my eye, I thought it was a megaphone. But I guess I shouldn't be embarrassed because the tag said early 10 thing. But now that I'm looking at it, I think it went on a very old blender. I'm not sure I have ever seen any wall art quite like this piece. It is quite interesting. It has a couple plastic birds mixed in with the plastic berries. I wonder how old this is. Does anybody have any idea when this was in style? I love old tin canister sets like this. I've really been trying to keep an eye out for small oil paintings, but this particular one just looks very mass-produced to me for some reason. I headed up to the second floor, and what a surprise. They have turned the main hallway into a library. Look how pretty. At the end of the hallway, I could look out over the gym floor where I had just come from. They literally have booths in every nook and cranny of this 3-story building. They even have booths in the stairwells. This was really the first brass I had seen all day. I think it's because brass is just so popular right now that people are just buying it up whenever they see it. I don't think I've ever seen a brass duck bowl before. I almost bought this vintage chess set. I had never seen one quite like it before. And I am just such a sucker for nostalgic old games. I saw so many pretty clocks in this antique mall, but they were not cheap. This one was $110. Here I am up on the 3rd floor of the building, and I have to say I am surprised that there is furniture on the 3rd floor. It makes me wonder if this building has an elevator. I have this exact Pyrex set for my mom. She would be shocked to know that it's selling for $150. I'm pretty sure I have one of these sitting in my fridge at home right now with leftover green beans inside. My friend Teresa of Our Green Acres loves carousel horses. This is one of the few rooms that you can tell was actually a classroom. It looks a little newer than the rest of the building, but it still has a slate chalkboard. I think these old copper pots were for hauling coal, and they're only asking $18.50, which I feel like is a good price for real copper. I like this crusty white trunk. Again, another heavy item to be on the third floor. This is not an oil painting like I was looking for, but it is a very pretty vintage print. This wood floor looks exactly like the floors of my childhood classrooms. There was some really pretty macrame made in the 60s and 70s, but I don't think I'd put this owl in that category. These pants remind me of my older cousins, who I thought were so cool and so stylish when I was little. This wood box contained an amazing fox hunting diorama. I have a very similar old railroad light that I got for $6 at a thrift store. Look at these beautiful vintage fabrics. Did you see my recent video where I shared some ideas on using up your fabric remnants? I love this piece of bark cloth. Wouldn't it make a beautiful pillow? Once we were back home, I couldn't wait to start decorating with all my new finds. I started with the $15 Lincoln book. I cut out the 8x10 photo of Lincoln from the dust jacket because I always remove the dust jacket anyway. I had an old frame that was the perfect size and style. I also had a random piece of 8x10 glass that fit the frame perfectly. So I just added the glass and the picture and then cut out a piece of cardboard to fit in the opening and taped around the edges with paper packing tape. I have a small shelf in my library where I display my Lincoln books and mementos. I leaned the frame against the back wall of this shelf, and then I added a log cabin jewelry box that I also purchased at the antique mall. I thought the jewelry box was overpriced at $32.50, but I knew I would really regret it if I didn't buy it. And now my Lincoln shelf is complete. I found this wood mortar and pestle for a great price, just $8, and I thought it was perfect to add to the dark academia theme of my library. I added it to this display of vintage bottles. I had previously printed out old labels and decoupaged them to the side of plain glass jars. Some of you may remember that I made a book nook from a thrift store clock. I'll link the video in the description box in case you missed it. My nook is getting a bit crowded, like my own home, but I had to make room for this $1 phonograph. I found a pair of vintage floral prints, $10 for both. Such a good deal. I hung them in my library for now, but I think they'll end up in the guest bathroom. As you could see, the book selection in Galena was overwhelming, so I didn't really spend much time searching through the shelves. However, in addition to the Lincoln book, I also picked up a children's book and a book about Currier and Ives, both full of beautiful illustrations. In fact, the covers are so pretty that I'm going to leave them sitting out rather than adding them to my bookshelves. I spent $10 on this old sewing machine drawer. I think wood boxes are one of the most versatile and affordable decor pieces you can buy because you can use them to store and display so many different things. They do a great job of corralling small items, making them look like a purposeful collection rather than just a bunch of clutter. I recently mentioned how pleased I was with how my kitchen counters were decorated, But there's always room for change when I find new things, and I found a few new things, including a tiled tray and a still life oil painting. I brushed some antiquing wax to the frame to darken the wood a bit and to cover some scratches. Then I used heavy-duty Velcro to hang it on my backsplash. The black paint on the tray looked too harsh next to the painting, so I decided to paint it with some of the blue acrylic enamel paint that I had left over from my grandfather clock makeover. I think that little bit of paint made a huge difference. Oddly enough, I had just recently found a similar oil painting at Goodwill for less than $5, and I decided to use that one too. I thought this frame could also benefit from a little paint, so I just brushed some dark blue acrylic paint over the brown stripe, and I think it looks so much better. I also changed out the summery blue flowers in my pitcher for some silk roses that I picked up at the antique mall for $6. I really like how they bring out the gold tones of the oil painting. For quite a while, I've had my kitchen utensils in a white crock that is really too large for that purpose. So when I saw this blue and white sugar canister, I knew it would work much better, perfectly in fact. And even though it's an older piece, it was only $12 because it was missing its lid. You'll have to let me know. Do you think that it's weird that I have two different fruit paintings in my kitchen just a few feet apart? My glass front kitchen cabinets are getting really full with strawberry dishes, many of them gifted to me by lovely viewers. So if I add anything new to my collection, it has to be something really special or really small. And I felt this little vintage jam jar met both of those criteria. I decided to trade out an existing bird print in the stairwell for the framed needlepoint. I just love this vintage frame. It's so unique and I think really complements the bird design. I think I was most excited to make a few changes to my fireplace mantle. I wanted to incorporate the pretty gold-framed mirror that I bought. So I used 2 small blocks of wood to help level out the irregularly shaped bottom edge. Then I layered another frame over the mirror and added a wood vase filled with dried flowers that I just bought at my neighbor's garage sale for $4. I bought a set of gold birds at the antique mall for $18. The birds are actually old stocking holders. I'm going to use them year-round, but I think I'll wait until I decorate for Christmas to add them to the mantle. On the opposite side of the TV, I just traded out the chippy white corbel for wood candlesticks made from old spindles for a warmer look. And just below on the hearth, I traded out a smaller trunk for this gorgeous leather trunk that I bought in Galena. It even says Galena on the side. I styled the top of the trunk with another wood candlestick and the pretty children's book. On the right side of the hearth, I filled the copper coal bucket with some birch branches and faux greenery, and I think it just looks adorable. I added a few of my shopping finds on tables around the room, like this basket of dried flowers. some vintage baskets, and this orange wood spool that I added some thrift store ferns to. I think this lidded basket is one of the best vintage baskets I've ever found. And I absolutely adore this former clock. I just stuck a ceramic bird in the hole for now. And I added some dried hydrangeas to some of my other recent purchases. I bought this hurricane lamp for just $5. I originally thought it was amber glass, but on closer inspection I realized it was just discolored from years of use. In changing out the decor on the sofa table, I removed the large faux plant and the 2 rustic spindles, which I still love, but I'm just ready to change things out for fall. When I bought this bird cage, I thought I'd fill it with books, but the small door is the only opening, so I added some vintage music rolls and some faux greenery instead. I also added a brass pedestal to the table. The tag said that it was a teapot stand. The Victorians really knew how to dress up the ordinary, didn't they? Yesterday, a package arrived in the mail, and when I opened it, I found the gorgeous Fitz and Floyd bookends from the antique mall. My husband had called them, paid for them over the phone, and somehow convinced them to send them in the mail. He is absolutely the most thoughtful person I know, and I've been blessed to know him for over 30 years. It goes without saying that these bookends are my favorite find from this shopping trip, but I'd love to know which items were your favorites. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Thank you so very much for watching. Hope to see you next week.